yes, we live in a world that is oppressive, that injustices are happening, that our realities are not seen or appreciated, that there are these systems that are actively working against our wellness and our health. All these things are true. Especially if we're thinking about here in the US, the history of the United States, it has not always been historically kind to people of color and LGBTQ individuals. Same thing in terms of in the UK, we look at colonization across the world, those things exist. So all this is existing, and I will be well, and I will be healthy, and I will live in joy. So we are living or we're going to coexist in these multiple realities where there are these systems that we are working to resist, and we are continuing to move towards our freedom and liberation. So it's combining both of those things and creating space for all those realities to exist together.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes Show. I am your host, Bolaabimbola, frequency alchemist, life coach, and energy practitioner. Daily Soul Bytes is where we have guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs in the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership, sharing their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest all the way from Texas in the United States. Her name is KIMBER SHELTON PhD. Welcome to the show, Kimber.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So nice to have you, Kimber. I will read your bio before we start. Dr. Kimber Shelton is a psychologist, an author, and a speaker, a licensed psychologist, and her practice KLS counseling and consulting services really specializes in addressing cultural diversity, LGBTQ issues, trauma, and relationship concerns. Dr. Shelton is committed to creating transformative healing spaces for minoritized groups, and she has over 20 publications, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about that. Thank you for being here again, Kimber. So tell us, how did you get to this place where you are now really focusing on the emotional and psychological support and expansion of minoritized groups? How did you get to this place? Just give us a brief summary of your journey.
Sure. Well, again, thank you so much for having me here. Glad to be here speaking with you today, especially talking about this important topic. And the short story on how I got here, that I always was interested in helping people and serving people. And even from a young person, just thinking about different careers that would make sense to me, and had, fortunately, mentorship and guidance along the way that really pushed me towards mental health and psychology, specifically becoming a counseling psychologist. But in my journey, in many programs here, before you go into a PhD program in counseling psychology, you have a master's degree in a counseling or counseling related field. And while I was working on my master's, there was a capstone project that we needed to do. And in the capstone project, had to talk about our own identity as a mental health professional. And in my reflection, I discussed that I wanted to be seen as a competent counselor, a competent therapist. I didn't want to be seen as only a Black woman therapist. And fortunately, my advisor said, you might want to think about that, which really just unraveled for me lots of stigma, shame, cultural identity issues that I was still grappling with. And the importance of us being able to show up fully who we are and fully present. And as me showing up as a Black woman therapist was anyway going to be a criticism to my competence or challenge my competence. So not a step by step, but that moves me in the direction of focusing on my minoritized communities who, fortunately, we are accessing therapy a lot more than we've ever accessed therapy in the past, especially here in the United States. And looking specifically at Black women, we're coming to therapy at rates that we were not coming before for lots of different reasons. One being there's greater access to care, and there's more of a focus on our self-care and awareness. But when we come to therapy and that therapist is not culturally competent, therapy doesn't work for minoritized groups. We're not going to get the things that we need. And so much of my focus has been on providing that culturally competent care to the individuals that I work for, and then also helping other mental health professionals increase their cultural competence. So when minoritized groups are coming into their care, they're able to get the help and services that they deserve.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that, Kimber. I'm also exploring this
Mhm.
this theme of being a Black woman in this earth space, and the limitations are there, the conditionings are there, and I can resonate with you experiencing that as you studied it, as you began to want to have a bit more freedom. You were reminded that there are these conditionings which are there, they're real. Even though we may say this reality is a projection, the experiences are quite real. And it's important how we come to experience more freedom, in beginning to have empathy and understanding of us as minority groups, minority identities and paths, but in
Mhm.
also understanding that at the end of it all, we are a soul. We are a human being in this earth plane existence, and how we experience that freedom, as well as having that empathy and understanding for those parts of us that have those identities. That is important. So I would love to ask you, Kimber, what would you call minoritized groups? Because yes, you may be a minority, but being minoritized is another thing. Or how would you define that?
Yeah, so trying to move away from the term minority that can have such implicit biases with it, being less than, being not as good, or inadequacy. And then also, it's just not an accurate representation of who people are. So minority is like looking more of that person or the individual, versus that term minoritized is there's a system that is leading people to have deficiencies, or it's not addressing their needs, or it's not providing the care or offering the care, is engaging in systems of oppression against these groups. So there's something that is happening that is interacting with individuals' identity versus an individual issue who's the minority.
Mm,
And then in general, it tends to be an incorrect term or definition, because if we look in many environments that we're in, and if we even look globally, people of color are the local majority. And so to say that we are the minority in a lot of situations doesn't make sense, because we're not. And even when we are the majority in a situation, we're still experiencing situations that lead us to have inappropriate or less than or inadequate care and treatment. Hence, again, the minoritized language versus us being minority.
yes, and you're right. Even when we are in our countries where we are, because I'm Nigerian, and even within that system, there is still a feeling of less. There is a feeling of minority even in that system. So
Yeah.
there is. It's important the modalities that we incline to, that are available to us, that help us to transcend these experiences are important. So I know that you were into radical healing as a modality. Could you tell us a bit about that modality?
Mhm. Yeah, radical healing really speaks to me for many different reasons, especially in working with minoritized groups, people of color, LGBTQ individuals, because it does such a beautiful job of acknowledging our truth and the realities that we're experiencing. Even just thinking about what you said right there, that we could be the majority in the situation and still feel minoritized, that it's not even necessarily a feeling. That's the truth, that we're in a situation and we may be the majority, but we're still being minoritized. So that there is that existence of experiencing injustices or oppression, or not having our full selves being seen and appreciated, that it acknowledges that truth, that is not always being spoken or always being seen, and certainly not always being validated, that it holds space for that truth. And then it's also offering space for that is only one part of our truth and our reality, and the things that we can do to bring more healing, wellness, liberation into our lives. So radical healing, it's founded in ethno-political psychology. This is the not so fun and interesting part of it, unless you are kind of a nerd and you like this information, but it's founded in liberation psychology, ethno-political psychology, Black psychology, and intersectionality, looking at the different intersections of who we are. It's founded in those different philosophies and sections of psychology. And it's essentially saying, yes, we live in a world that is oppressive, that injustices are happening, that our realities are not seen or appreciated, that there are these systems that are actively working against our wellness and our health. All these things are true. Especially if we're thinking about here in the US, the history of the United States, it has not always been historically kind to people of color and LGBTQ individuals. Same thing in terms of in the UK, we look at colonization across the world, those things exist. So all of this is existing, and I will be well, and I will be healthy, and I will live in joy. So we are living, or we're going to coexist in these multiple realities where there are these systems that we are working to resist, and we are continuing to move towards our freedom and liberation. So it's combining both of those things and creating space for all those realities to exist together.
So I want us to break this down, Kimber.
Mm-hmm.
My first degree, well, yeah, I started medicine at first, and I did a couple of years of medicine, and then I did a degree in psychology here in the UK. So I do have an understanding of using our beliefs and how our beliefs really come to affect or impact and decide on our behaviors. I want to know a bit more. For instance, somebody comes to work with you. What can they expect? What does it feel like? What are the different tools that you use when you work with your clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if that's okay, then I'll just go more in detail with what that radical treatment or that radical healing looks like in treatment and helping clients to move towards that radical wellness. That, again, my specializations are depression, anxiety, trauma, LGBTQ issues, working with people who are identifying as minoritized group, people who are coming in their different transitions in their lives. And often the people that I see, when they come to me, they feel stuck, which makes sense. I don't want to go back to where I was necessarily. I'm not really sure how to get over to this other place. And a lot of times what we find there's are stuck in stories, scripts, ideas, narratives that have been made for them or told to them or constructed from somebody else about them, and then have internalized those things and are needing to now release themselves from those stories or those scripts because they do not serve them, they no longer serve them. And that radical healing can help to get us unstuck and to better manage both of these realities. So just broadly speaking of what radical healing is, there's 5 different tenets to it. One being collectivism, that I find when we are struggling with things for whatever reason, we think, I need to isolate. Let me pull away from people. Let me disconnect from my resources. That I need to figure these things out myself. It might even be giving these messages of, you can do it, you're strong, you deal with it, persevere through it. But this is isolation that happens. And then there's also these systems that are at place that when communities of color specifically try to get together and take care of themselves, these systems come in to try to pull apart those communities and to maintain dysfunction or discord in our communities. So one of the tenets of radical healing is collectivism, that quite often our traumas are happening collectively, and then therefore our healing has to be something that is collective. So instead of us withdrawing or isolating, that's a time when we actually want to lean into our communities, come more into our supports, develop, get more resources for ourselves. So one of the things that I'm helping clients to do is identify the different resources they have of recognizing their community, building their community, becoming more a part of their community. Again, that our healing is not going to be in isolation and being able to connect with others who are engaged in their own healing process and journeys. So that's the first piece of it. And just stop, pause there if there's any ideas or things that you wanted to share about that or moving on.
No, I'm wanting to hear the steps. Definitely. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So there's collectivism, and then there's a critical consciousness, which means that we get to ask questions. So inviting clients to ask questions about why is this happening? What does this mean to you? Where is this coming from? Those scripts that we have internalized, to recognize those scripts and start to question, is that actually true for me? Does this make sense for me? That you've been feeling depressed for a while, or clients coming in and saying that I'm depressed, or the depression is tied to who they are and their identity. And then being able to ask them, okay, you're depressed. And then who else are you? What else are you? That the depression is a part of you or it's something that impacts you, but the depression is not necessarily us. So to start to pull that apart and to start to separate ourselves from these identities that don't serve us. I'm the strong one. I am the caregiver. I am the one other people come to. How did you get in that role? What does this role mean for you? How is it serving you? If we're experiencing issues at work, I need to work harder. I need to do more. What happens if you work harder? What happens if you don't work harder? Then we get to critique, question, become more critical of these stories and narratives that we are given. And we get to start to critique even our own identity narratives, and that makes sense of. There's radical hope as a third step in that. And our radical hope, working with clients to start to envision possibilities of change, freedom, and dignity. So when clients are coming in to see me, I'm not so focused on, tell me about your best self, or what's your soft life look like to you, although those are helpful and important things. I'm more focused on, who is your liberated self? When you are free from all these things that are keeping you bound, keeping you stuck, that are keeping you constrained, when you are freed from those things and you are liberated, who are you? What are you doing? What does that look like? Who are your relationships? What are your relationships? What is your time spent looking like? So envision possibility for changes in ways that maybe we never got to think about those things before, or creatively explore these elements of ourselves. In radical healing, the fourth stage is that we're looking into our strengths and our resiliency. But so important being that we get to identify what our strengths are. We get to identify what resilience means to us, instead of someone else being able to tell us what wellness means. We identify what wellness means for us. And then that final stage, and this isn't a step-by-step process, but these are things that are happening in tandem with each other, is coming into our own authenticity and having more cultural awareness. So oftentimes we are going and looking at our ancestral wisdom, our ancestral healing, our ancestral knowledge to help us to better understand who we are, and then the areas of ourselves we want to continue to explore and develop. So that's it quick in a nutshell, but happy to unravel more of those things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kimber. I love those steps because we're really starting from that place where we are knowing that we are not alone. And we are reaching out to get the help that is relevant to us, that feels right to us. That may be in our community, that may not be in our community, but it's about reaching out for what feels right. And that takes some degree of self-awareness and sometimes audacity. You know, sometimes we have to have audacity to actually reach out for help, because nothing outside of you sometimes tells you that you can be more. So it takes sometimes a lot of audacity, and I love the way you also weave in a lot of the inspiration for liberation from those parts, those identities that do not allow us to really see ourselves beyond those parts, beyond the identities, because this is where our true liberation lies, away from those conditionings and those ties. So I love that. Now, why is this important for authenticity? Why is radical healing important to get to that space of authenticity? Because not everybody comes to this earth plane to be free. There are some of us who have come to explore that shadow, and we don't necessarily want to be free from it. I know that in any system that is dominant or repressive, you will find the exception person, the person that moves beyond that, that transcends that. So there is no one hat that fits all, even within that community. And it's important for us to recognize that even within the community, we are an individual soul, infinite soul, part of the universal soul, part of the universal existence. So I did want to ask, in terms of authenticity, how would you define authenticity, number one? And number two, how does radical healing really support that journey? Authenticity, I believe, is a journey, deepening an understanding of what you consider to be that self. So what is authenticity for you, and how does radical healing take us to that place?
Yeah, I think simply put, our authentic self is the truest version of ourselves, that we have that deeper understanding of who we are, what's important to us, what our needs are, what our values are. Authentically, we can express those things and communicate those things to others. This might not be a part of someone's authentic self, but ideally that we are also creating space for other people's authentic selves and their wellness. It's going to be something that is very individually defined, and that there needs to be space for us to be able to express our authentic self. While it's very individually, well, that might not even be true either. It might not be something that's very individually focused. It could be something that is more collectively focused, our authentic self. So there can be diversity in it. But I think something that we share in terms of authenticity is that we are all worthy individuals. And a part of our authentic self is being in touch with our worth and then living in a way that is consistent with who we are as a worthy individual. That we exist, we are here, we have survived, is suggesting that we are worthy. So as a mother to twin daughters, recognize like when we come into this world, we have done nothing. All we've done is survive. Like we survived through the pregnancy, we survived through either coming through the birth canal or being pulled out of the abdomen. But that baby has done nothing other than survive. But the fact that it survived shows that it is worthy. And then when we come out, we're saying, hey, I'm over here, pay attention to me. Actually, you put your needs aside and come over here and focus on my needs. So we come out with the survival instinct. We come out saying that I belong here. I am here. I'm supposed to be here. Pay attention to me. Again, I am worthy of existing. I'm also worthy of your attention. Ideally, I'm going to be worthy of your love. I'm going to be worthy of your care. So we're coming out with worth already, and we've done nothing, which can help us to move away from the idea that my worth is defined in the things that I'm doing, what I'm offering to someone else, my productivity. No, we are here, thus we are worthy. The things that we're doing can express and demonstrate our worth, but we are worthy. So a large part of my work is helping people to reconnect with their worthy self, to be able to tap back into their self-worth, that our worthiness is always there. It just may be covered up with these messages and scripts that are suggesting we're not worthy or we're inadequate. And then tapping into our worth, oftentimes then we see people's authentic selves get to emerge and to flourish.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that you're a mother as well. I'm also a mother. The baby of my house is now 27, and is very much into his identity. He's a medical doctor here in the UK, and I always ask him, "Are you feeling that you were not getting the best of this system?" And he does say to me that he has experience some degree of separation in this system. And it's not necessarily limited to this country. I think anywhere in the world that you go to, this planet is about separation. And I ask him, how do you work through that? And he goes, I just go where I feel I am understood. I work with those I feel understand me, and I move away from those that do not. And I think there is an element of awareness in that, which I'm grateful for. I learn a lot from him. You know, even as parents,
Yeah.
our
Right.
kids do teach us a lot. And I love what you said about us really coming to and own what is what is common to a number of those who we feel empathy and understanding with. That is the collective aspect, but also understanding what is really different about us. What do I enjoy? What are
Mhm.
my what are the things that inspire me? What are my personal goals? So this is the dynamic nature of the system we're in. There are
Mhm.
some things that we will experience as a member of a community, and some things we will experience as an individual. And it's about understanding those aspects and owning it and accepting those aspects. They're all parts of us. And
Mhm.
I once again want to emphasize that we can transcend even the community, even the individual aspects, and really see ourselves as a soul operating in those parts.
Mhm.
I think that is really a liberating aspect of
Mhm.
that this has been my journey to
Mhm.
really understand the
Mhm.
parts of me that are resonating with the collective and the parts of me that are resonating as an individual soul. What is unique about me? And then transcending that into a more balanced view
Mhm.
of whether you are looking at the masculine essence, which is those bits that are wanting to focus on just the goals. You're only worthy if you are achieving certain things. You're only worthy if you're strong. You're only worthy if you're decisive. But there's also the feminine aspects, which is you're already worthy. And your intuition carries a lot of wisdom that really is very different from knowledge. And there is a need to balance, but it's not about doing away with one. It's important to be strong, but at the same time, you don't want to burn out. You want to be in a place where you're able to find rest and able to get help. So I love the way you are able to help your clients see those different aspects, see the need for community, the need for them to own who they are as an individual, even within that community, and how they can work as a team, as opposed to against the team, but also understanding the essence within them, the masculine and the feminine essence, and coming to that place of balance within the individual. I would love you to really expand on some of the work that you're doing. I know you've got some conferences coming up, and how those who may want to connect with you can experience those parts of your work.
Mhm. Yeah, happy to share those things. Just comment on what you were just expressing, that in our liberation, there also gets to be a fluidity to our identities, that the way that we're identifying today may not be necessarily the way that we are identifying ourselves tomorrow, and being our authentic selves and being liberated, we get to be free and exploring who we are, of defining and then redefining ourselves, of moving across our life and across our journeys, being able to fully come into ourselves, but coming into ourselves kind of different in the different journeys and stages of our lives. So thank you for sharing those elements. Yeah, have some really exciting things coming up. So as well as providing individual care, as I said too, I'm a speaker and I do trainings for mental health professionals. And I am the co-founder of the Counseling Black Women Collective, which is a platform that amplifies Black women's mental health and mental wellness. We offer trainings and resources to mental health professionals, and then we also highlight Black women therapists here in the United States. And if you are in the US, we would love to see you in November, Friday, November 7th. We're hosting our third Counseling Black Women Conference. This year's theme is called Unapologetic Wellness, Black Women Embracing Their Resistance and Their Resiliency. So that's going to be in Atlanta. We'll be offering continuing education to mental health professionals. So I'd love for anyone to attend there. You can learn more about that through Counseling Black Women at Counseling Black Women, and then also can be in contact with me at doc.kimber. And if you are interested in learning more about working with Black women, and specifically also with radical healing with Black women, I'll just also highlight that you can pick up your copy of A Handbook on Counseling African American Women, which is available in the UK as well, but definitely here in the US. You can get it from anywhere that you purchase books. Our publisher is Bloomsbury, so you can order from there. Also, it's available on Amazon and again, anywhere else that you are getting books. I'm super excited about the book, love it. I go back and read through it. I'm always learning more things and rereading it. It was an Amazon bestseller and it's won a couple of different awards too.
Powerful, powerful. Tell us more about that book. I love that you've written a lot. You have a lot of publications. Tell us about that book and a couple of your other publications.
Sure, yes. This handbook on counseling African American women was actually birthed by myself and then two fellow psychologists, Doctors Michelle Lynn and Mahalet Andala, and we were all working together in Georgia at the time at Georgia Institute of Technology's Counseling Center, who has a high population of international students and is the U.S. has the largest graduation of Black engineers in the country. And not just at Georgia Tech, but just more widely recognizing that the training that we received and also the resources that Black women and Black men were coming in were not always, again, what was going to be most helpful in terms of their care. So we spent quite a bit of time looking for a publisher who could publish our book and get the message out, and again, be able to provide as much training and resources to mental health professionals as possible. So that's how the book came together. It has a number of different sections in it. The first section is focused on providing some background elements and looking at defining intersectionality and cultural competence in working with Black women. It talks about specific mental health issues that Black women commonly come in with. The next section focuses on different tools and strategies that we can use, different counseling techniques and interventions we can use to work with Black women. And then the final part looks at some specific populations of Black women, sexual orientation and gender diversity, unique or diverse Black women, college students. There's other populations that are just coming to the top of my head. But we are very intentional in not only having experts who are experts in Black women's mental health, but then also being able to amplify other Black researchers and mental health professionals in this. So the book is written primarily by Black women who are experts in mental health. And through their writing, we can hear this combination of their education and clinical and research experience, as well as the majority of authors in the book have had their own therapy. So it's a very nuanced in providing that professional piece of what mental health therapy looks like for us, and this very nuanced piece of coming in with our own personal experiences and how that then plays an important role in the services and care that we're looking for and need.
That's so powerful. I think self-acceptance is so important. Accepting the themes we've come to explore, accepting who we are. And I love that you have this book that is looking at the difficulties, the challenges that Black women in particular face. For that empowered Black woman who is listening to this or watching this, who has, who is having some difficulty accepting self, what are some of the steps that you would, the daily practices that you would advise that will allow a deeper a deeper degree, a deeper level of self-acceptance. This is part of the work that I also do. I've also written a book, Daily Soul Bytes. Daily Soul Bytes for an Inspired Life is really deepening an awareness of the perspectives within us. We all have different perspectives, and this is regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, regardless of gender, regardless of race. We all have different perspectives within us. And this is the higher perspectives and the lower perspectives. The lower perspectives are usually around fear, around anxiety, around, feeling isolated. Then you have the higher perspectives that are also there, but we may not always be aware of them. Because when, those higher perspectives are usually around love, around forgiveness, around gratitude. Because we may have a thought that we've been conditioned with that says, I am not good enough, I am not enough. But we can come to find that even within us, there is also that higher perspective of I am enough, I am worthy. But we have to work, we have to do the inner work to get it, to actually understand it and to own it. And so Daily Soul Bites, my book, really raises an awareness of these different perspectives within us. It's all within us. And we can really we may need help to help us to find it. But we can have these perspectives and we can have a deeper and easier relationship, an easier integration, and really coming to a place where we can own and align to what we have observed, to what we have become aware of. Because it's not about what we are seeing, it's about what we focus on, and whatever we focus on is what will expand in our lives. So I would love to hear from you how, those who may be listening or watching this, who may really be exploring those lower perspectives at this moment. It's not about right or wrong, because nobody comes to a place where they have no lower perspectives to explore in their lifetime. It's always about the ups and downs. But you can come to a place where you're able to hold the higher perspectives for longer, and you're able to integrate the lower perspectives quicker and quicker based on your daily practices and the tools that you have. So in your work, what advice or what steps, what daily practices would you advise for the Black woman who is in that place of exploring those lower perspectives and is not, is really not able to push through and transcend on their own, and they're wanting some steps and some guidance. What would you advise as daily practices?
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that and how you're even describing things and the question you're asking. It makes me think with radical healing and that ability to hold multiple perspectives and multiple worldviews, that there is a truth and reality of Black women, particularly here in the United States, where we do experience oppression, we do experience racism, we experience gendered racism. There's the concept of misogynoir, hatred towards Black women and Black community overall. But those things are true, and that makes our lives more challenging. It's not our identity as a Black woman, it's our experiences of oppression with our identity. So those challenges and struggles certainly are true. And that is one part of our story. And that is one part of our truth. We are also mothers and partners and friends and educators and professionals and support people. We are funny, we are kind, we are joyful, we are emotional, we are traveling, we are living authentically, we are building relationships, we are creative, we are starting new jobs, we are entrepreneurs. So these scripts and stories and narratives that are so based on looking at our inadequacies or the deficits or the things that are against us, again, oftentimes that's not even our script, that's these stories that are being told about us and we have to contend with. But that is one part of our existence. There's this whole other piece and parts of our story and existence that there needs to be more stories shared, explored, amplified over there. So for those of us who are struggling with leaning too heavily onto the side of us that is struggling or who's burnt out or who is overwhelmed, that we need to find ways to liberate ourselves from that and to start to create these stories that are also communicating, expressing our kindness, our softness, our gentleness, to move away from those ideas that our worth is in the things that we are doing and to be able to lean into our rest, our recovery, our silence, our not doing. That particularly post our most recent election, we see so many Black women in the US stepping back. I'm not going to be at the forefront. I'm not going to be taking care of other people. I'm not going to sacrifice myself. So that active resistance of taking on or living in this role that other people have placed us in, actively resisting that and saying, no, I'm going to focus on myself and my self-care, my family and my community. I'm going to focus on my sphere of influence. Being able to see ourselves more fully and to be able to lean into those parts of us and those communities and environments that are going to support and amplify those parts of us, and to not fall prey to seeing ourselves as one dimensional, that we are much more complex, complicated, beautiful, spectacular than one view or image of us. So in a day-to-day practice, I just encourage Black women to go into that critical consciousness of asking ourselves, what does this mean to me? Why am I doing those things? Why is this message being given to me? What do I want to do? What can I do? How is this going to impact me? That question of my liberated self. What is my liberated self? What does my worthy self do in this moment? How do I feed, nurture, build that liberated and worthy me?
This really reminds me, Kimber, of something I heard somebody say once, that when you look in a mirror and you're expecting that mirror to smile at you, you're wanting a smile, but you're looking in that mirror and you're expecting that mirror to smile at you. Before you smile, that mirror is not going to smile. The mirror only smiles when you smile. So whatever we want to see around us has to come from within us first. And so we're talking about the same thing, Kimber. It's about that self-awareness. It's about looking at the system. The system is that mirror. And the system is not going to smile. It's not going to acknowledge. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to appreciate your worth, the worth that you already have. So this is important in knowing, what do I do on a daily basis? What do I do? Not what is this person going to do for me? Because that system only responds to what we are developing, what we are transforming, what we are integrating within us. And we will find that, I look at trauma and I say to myself, I had to work through a lot of trauma myself, and I could not charge certain prices as an entrepreneur until I dealt with certain levels of trauma. And it gets better and better. So we want to rise, but that system is not what is going to make it work for us. It is the resilience and the worth that we have within ourselves that allows us to challenge, that allows us to shift what we are experiencing around us. What would you say to that?
Yeah. But yes, it is so important for us, again, to be aligned with our worthiness, and that we can change our perception, we can change our environment, we can change the way that we're operating in the world. While also true that, unfortunately, that because of the strength and the tenacity of some of these systems, still we're going to experience hardships and pain. However, internally, although we might be doing different things externally based on our survival, that does not have to take away or steal from our worthiness and our view and our sense of self. So looking inward and then doing as much as we can, that then what's being reflected back is consistent with inwardly what is within us. And I almost think too, like looking even like through that mirror. So when I think about our ancestral healing and our ancestral health, that the hardships and pains that we are experiencing are not necessarily unique to us. We're still having the same fights and issues that our mothers had, that our grandmothers had, that our great grandmothers had, that our ancestors had. And I think about, especially here in the United States, for us who are descendants of enslaved Africans, that our enslaved grandmothers, they could not live in peace or they could not live in rest. They had to find or still moments of joy, but they couldn't have the liberation that they deserved and needed. And then I think of our mothers who had to work twice as hard or do as much, or who never could be weak and always had to show their strengths so that their children could have more freedoms and flexibilities. So our great grandmothers, they could not do these things. Our mothers choosing to do things differently to give us more privileges, and how we honor them in being able to live rested lives, lived healthy lives, living healed lives, of stopping these patterns of intergenerational traumas that hurt us. So even like reaching through that mirror and going back to that ancestral strength to help to lift us up and to live in our worthiness, that our worth is not just a reflection of ourselves, our worth is also a reflection of our ancestors' worth. So even if my day-to-day experiences are not necessarily honoring my worth, I maintain my worth. I maintain my mother's worth. I maintain my grandmother's worth.
Mm, definitely. Healing to DNA level,
Mhm,
healing to that, healing the narratives to that level of the DNA. And I know that there are so many different ancestral narratives. I remember, um, you know, a time when I decided I will no longer watch um, slave stories or slave movies because it's perpetuating that narrative. And it's a balance. It's not
mhm,
about, for me, denying the existence of that history. It's also about understanding how I do want to see myself in the present moment. Because sometimes narratives serve us and sometimes they do not. And it's an
mhm,
individual choice.
mhm,
It's about understanding for yourself what is serving your theme, what you have come to explore,
mhm,
and deciding what you would like to do in terms of your own very individual steps moving forward in your day to day. And my paternal grandmother was married to a man who had 8 wives, and I remember my father saying to me that she had decided that she could not live with him anymore and she had to live. This is in the 50s. This is a very dynamic woman. She was called Thunderstorm. Her surname was Thunderstorm. And I knew her, and she was not somebody who smiled a lot. Very, very unlike my maternal grandmother. This is about history, about our ancestors. We
mhm,
will have women who have different traits, different characteristics. And it's important for us to hold that collective narrative, but it's also important for us to own our own individual narratives. My paternal grandmother, was rich enough to send my father here to the UK in the 60s. So he was a lawyer here in the 60s in the UK, based on the hard work that his
mhm,
mother, a trader, was actually able to actually support him to do.
mhm,
And he came here, and there was obviously a very different UK as we know it now. And he obviously had to deal with a lot of the difficulties that those who were here in the 60s had to do. But he went back home after being a lawyer, and he worked as a barrister before he passed away in at the age of 48. Very, very young man.
mhm,
So there are a lot of stories. There are a lot of narratives,
mhm,
and it's important for us to own what is ours, to heal what doesn't serve us, and to
mhm,
move forward with that knowledge of the tools and the modalities like yours, radical healing. I'm very much into energy healing myself. I'm a quantum Reiki energy practitioner. So I support clients who are ready to shift different levels of
Mhm.
of trauma to a place of liberation, to understand who they are in this present time, which is where our resilience starts from. That self-acceptance, unconditional love is not something that the ego self understands. It's something that the higher self, that spirit self understands. And then we can begin to show that love to our own self limitlessly, and we can then see that environment which doesn't change. It doesn't become more loving. You're so right. The system doesn't become more loving. You're just able to transcend it a lot more based on the healing and the tools that you have, and the path you've come to explore. So
Mhm.
thank you so much, Kimba. Do you have any final words for us today based on your publications and your work? I love this has been a really fantastic, cherished conversation. Do you have any final words for us today before we go?
Thank you again for having me here. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So I appreciate the work that you're doing and the messages, the positive messages that you are putting out there. In closing, I'm just encouraging people to live in their unapologetic wellness, to live in their unapologetic truth, and to move through to closer and closer to that liberated self.
Mm, liberated self. That is it. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Where can people find you when they want to connect with you, Kimba?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook at doc.kimber. Also, you can find the Counseling Black Women Collective at Counseling Black Women, same profiles, and you can just look up my name on LinkedIn too. And fingers crossed, I have a TikTok that will be coming out soon, so you can stay updated for that as well.
Fantastic. And I will be sharing all your links. Thank you again for joining me today, Dr. Kimber Shelton.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'd like to thank our listeners and those who are watching for joining us today and to ask you to connect. Connect with Dr. Kimber Shelton. And this is really about understanding who we are. And this is if you've come to explore these themes as a Black woman, there are challenges that the system will place. And how do you move beyond those challenges using that modality of radical healing and really become your much more liberated self? Because freedom and peace, there's nothing as sweet as that. Um, and I look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye bye.